Hi, I'm Hayley, and this instructional video will provide an overview of both psychoanalytic and psychodynamic approaches, in particular, the theories created by Freud, Erikson, and Bowlby. To begin with, it's important to provide definitions as to what psychoanalytic and psychodynamic approaches are. Psychoanalytic relates to theories or techniques related to studying the unconscious mind. Psychodynamic relates to personality, human behavior, feelings, emotions, and how they might relate to early experience. The psychoanalytic psychodynamic approach was developed in the early 20th century by Sigmund Freud and others. These were the earliest attempts to systematically describe, explain, and predict human behavior and development. These help counselors to recognize when specific needs of a client have not been met and when they should be addressed, and helps to guide the counseling strategy. Freud's theory of personality development is where Freud suggests that there are only two basic drives that serve to motivate all thoughts, emotions, and behavior. These are sex and aggression, which represent life and death. He believed that these drives represented the whole survival instinct and could be combined into one overall drive: to stay alive, procreate, and to prevent others from stopping or reducing these needs. Freud claimed that these drives underlie every motivation that humans experience. He believed that the majority of what we experience in our lives, the underlying emotions, beliefs, feelings, and impulses, are not available to us at a conscious level, but are buried in our unconscious. Freud suggested our personality consists of three related elements, and that psychological problems stem from conflicts between all three. These are the id, or the child, which is our impulsive unconscious emotions, moods, drives, playfulness, and misbehaving. Then we have the ego, or the adult, which is more logical, planning, problem-solving, peacekeeping, and umpiring. And then the superego, or the parent, which is moralizing, criticizing, bossing, blaming, and punishing, and is our moral conscience. Freud believed that our maturity depends on our ability to strengthen the adult, or ego, whose role is to resolve the conflict between our inner child and inner parent. Freud also gave us his theory of sexual development, where he demonstrated his belief that personality is determined early in life. In this theory, he describes 4 developmental stages and a latency or inactive period. We begin with the oral phase, which is 0 to 1, followed by the anal phase, 1 to 3, the phallic phase, 3 to 6, the latency stage, 6 to 11, and the genital phase, which is adolescence. These stages are driven by biological maturation, and this process forces us to face key tasks inherent to each stage. At each psychosexual stage, the id's impulses and social demands come into conflict. Freud believed that harsh client-rearing methods can heighten this conflict and the child's anxiety, leading to fixations or complexes. For example, if there is conflict in the oral stage, he believed that people may develop habits such as fingernail biting, overeating, or smoking. If it occurred in the genital stage, issues with marriage, sexuality, and child rearing may occur. To protect us from such things, Freud believed that people develop defense mechanisms which have lasting effects on our personalities. These mechanisms are unconscious reactions to the unpleasant emotions we may experience when conflict occurs. As seen on the slide, there are 9 ways we defend ourselves. Repression, where people block a thought from their conscious awareness by moving upsetting information, such as sexual feelings regarding one's parents, aggressive feelings towards a sibling, from consciousness to the unconscious, so it's less threatening. Denial, minimizing or failing to appreciate the negative implications of an event or experience, such as dismissing a potentially serious physical symptom as being unimportant. There is also a reaction formation, where you're expressing outwardly the exact opposite of what you're feeling inwardly, such as when a young boy feels affection for a young girl, but responds by making fun of her. Displacement, or expressing a negative emotion, often anger, in a setting which is less risky than the setting one first experienced the emotion, such as being yelled at by your boss, then coming home and taking it out on your partner. Transference, transferring emotional feelings from their original source onto another. An example of this is that you think your partner doesn't want to listen to you. However, it really is your leftover frustration that your parents didn't listen to you. Rationalization, the justification of one's behavior using plausible or socially acceptable reasons for it, or making excuses for engaging in unacceptable acts, such as justifying cheating on your taxes by convincing yourself that everyone does it, so it's not really cheating. There is also regression, where you revert to immature patterns of behavior, and sublimation, which is expressing unacceptable impulses in a way that actually brings rewards rather than punishment, such as unleashing pent-up aggression by playing hockey or football. Then finally, there's projection, which is transferring one's own thoughts, feelings, or motives upon another person. For instance, you might dislike someone, but you know that belief isn't proper. Therefore, you solve the problem by believing that they dislike you. Whilst a lot of Freud's work has been relegated by newer theories, his work on the unconscious state and its influence, as well as these defense mechanisms, can still be useful when working with clients today. The next main influence on psychodynamic theories was Erik Erikson. Unlike Freud, who focused on internal biological drives, Erikson described 8 predictable life stages people experience throughout their lifetime. He labeled his stages of development psychosocial, the internal psychological needs of the individual conflicting with the needs of society, where we need to establish a balance between ourselves and the outside world. Erikson identified social factors like family, friends, relationship, work, and culture as key drivers of behavior and development, with a big emphasis on the adolescent period with development of a person's identity. He also emphasized the midlife period, where you give to the next generation through child rearing, caring for others, and productive work, as often presenting as a midlife crisis. In a person's first year of life, Erikson believed that they were in the trust versus mistrust stage. If they received warm, responsive care, infants will gain a sense of trust or confidence that the world is good. However, fear and mistrust will occur if infants are neglected or handled harshly. From 1 to 3 years, children want to decide for themselves by using new mental and motor skills. Parents can foster autonomy by permitting reasonable free choice and not forcing or shaming the child. If this is not done, self-doubt can occur. Initiative versus guilt develops between ages 3 and 6. Through make-believe play, children gain insight into the person that they can become. Initiative, a sense of ambition and responsibility, develops when parents support their child's sense of purpose. However, guilt over thoughts and actions can occur if this is not supported. 6 to 11 is the industry versus inferiority stage. At school, children learn to work and cooperate with others. Inferiority can develop when negative experiences at home, at school, or with peers leads to feelings of incompetence. In adolescence, identity versus role confusion occurs. This is where the young person forms a personal identity by exploring values and vocational goals. The negative outcome here is confusion about future adult roles and an inability to establish a sense of self. Intimacy versus isolation occurs in early adulthood. Here, young adults establish intimate relationships. However, because of earlier disappointments, some individuals cannot form close bonds and remain isolated. The next stage is generativity versus stagnation, which happens in middle adulthood. Generativity means giving to the next generation through child-rearing, caring for others, or productive work. The person who fails in these ways feels an absence of meaningful accomplishment and can give way to self-absorption. Finally, old age brings integrity or despair. Integrity results from feeling that life was worth living as it happened. Older people who are dissatisfied with their lives fear death and have many regrets. Counselors use Erikson's theory to look at where the client is in the life cycle and how well they adapt to the normal crises of their age group. If a client has not resolved an earlier stage crisis, instead of trying to resolve issues of the past, which is often out of the client's control, they are encouraged to develop skills and strengths for the future, which is very much in the client's control. Finally, we'll look at Bowlby's attachment theory. He was the first theorist to focus on the interpersonal dimension of early childhood experiences, with importance placed on early child rearing. Bowlby believed early interactions or patterns of attachment with significant caregivers shaped the individual's expectations and later relationships, and suggested that a child's emotional and behavioral development is related to the way in which they were able to attach to or form a bond with their primary caregiver. These images formed early in life from various interactions act as a sort of a template or guide for later relationships. For example, if you experience loving and accepting interactions with your parents as a young child, this is what you will expect from later relationships as well. But if you have an internal images of your parents as harsh and judgmental, you may become self-critical and feel you can never live up to other people's standards. If a child felt positive and loved, they formed a secure attachment. These people are comfortable with emotional attachments and do not experience intimacy as threatening. They are able to manage their emotions appropriately, as well as rely for emotional support when necessary. A fear of rejection drives the behavior of clients with an avoidant interpersonal style, and they develop strategies to cope by avoiding or becoming detached from interpersonal relationships, which require closeness or intimacy. Individuals with an avoidant attachment style have taught themselves to switch off their emotions and distance themselves from the interpersonal interaction that is perceived as threatening, adopting a rigid self-reliance. These individuals feel uncomfortable both relying on others emotionally and having others rely on them. Clients will often present with anger and low frustration tolerance levels, particularly in interpersonal situations. Outbursts of anger may function as a way of pushing people away. Clients with an insecure, resistant attachment style are driven by the fear of loss and rejection, as they have failed to develop feelings of security from their attachment figure. This characterizes their behavior in interpersonal relationships. They crave frequent reassurance and encouragement, particularly from close relationships, and may be constantly alert to signs or cues that indicate rejection. These individuals may tolerate abuse or mistreatment by others rather than risk rejection. Individuals with an insecure attachment style depend on others or external factors for their sense of self-worth, and this can lead to vulnerability to developing depression. As Bowlby suggests children develop a working model of themselves, secure, insecure, or avoidant attachment styles may also be reflected in a client's overall behavior, as well as any specific behavioral patterns in their relationships. As counselors, it is important to gather information about a client's early attachment, as it can help us understand its influence on their behavior. Once this is achieved, strengthening the client's self-worth, reconnecting with their emotions, or learning self-soothing strategies can commence. As you've seen in this video, Freud, Erikson, and Bowlby have developed key theories around human development by analyzing psychodynamic and psychosocial impacts on people. For additional viewpoints, please view the instructional video on cognitive and humanistic theories. Thank you.